Great. Thank you for letting us know. Okay, perfect. So why are we here today in these moments together? So there is a lot to unpack on this year Mental Health Day. So you know that Sunday is coming up soon, World Mental Health Day. And the topic that the Federation chose for this year is mental health in an unequal world. And this really caught my eye when I was starting to actually, because of my work, to prepare for this week of facilitation and workshop. I thought that was really, really proper. So again, not only because 2020 has shown us a lot of inequality in the world, but because actually COVID has put on light to something that we already know, that it is a lot of lack of access to mental well-being resources. So probably if you are at the uni, but no matter where you are in the world, or as a student at the university, you might know that sometimes it's not easy to access resources that take care of our mental health. So you have a community, you have me well, you have maybe heard from some people about some psychologists, counseling, but yet still some people, they don't know where to go, right? So I don't know if you experience that, and please feel free to interact via chat. When I ask you things, you can also unmute yourself. I like this to be a bit interactive. I think it's nicer, right? If at this time of the day, we really interact with each other. And do you know also that mental health services, not only they're not so accessible, but they remains really unequal. So with between 75 to 95% of people with mental disorders in low middle income countries who are unable to access mental health services. This is a lot, yeah? And also the access per se in high income countries is not much better, as I just said. So also this has to do a lot with the lack of investment of some countries in that, in general, of organizations, right? So it's really little budget that is given to mental health and to really fill that gap. So I think the theme is really appropriate, but that really brought me to think about inequality in general and people feeling very much excluded. So again, to give you a few data, because I think, you know, I like always a little bit of scientific research behind the things I explain and that we do. So mental health gets an average 2% national health budget, and we're talking about global. I think it's really, really ridiculously low. And actually of the international healthcare assistance in low and middle income countries, thinking, for example, India, thinking Tanzania, Zimbabwe, and so forth, the mental health accounts for 0.4. Also ridiculously low. And nearly 9 out of 10 people with mental health problems, they say that actually the stigma and the discrimination have a lot of negative effect on their lives. Do you also know that actually there are certain communities who are more affected? So there is this usual gender conversation. Are men more affected than women, and so forth? Many of them are legends. So women and men are affected just equally by mental struggle. So just so you know, I would like to start killing this myth immediately. They're just equally affected. However, we as women are diagnosed way more, also because of the times we go to the doctor or because of our ability to open up. And we tend to have as rate of depression a bit more than men, also because of hormones, okay? But we are equally affected. However, sometimes when women go to doctor, we are treated also in an unequal way. And sometimes we are told that we are maybe anxious, that we are, you know, overreacting. I think this is part of what the Mental Health Federation wants to also tackle. And as well, also risk of suicide increases in certain community, such as, for example, the LGBT community. So there is a lot of things to unpack here. So I thought, how do we start, right? How do we start? What can we do? What can we do as our contribution for this big mission that is equality? Because the conversation is just too big. So try to really unpack what we can do to stop stigmatizing. I thought about what I do in my business, which is communication. How could we communicate to really include people? But before we go there, and I show you a little bit what we're going to do, I would like to ask you, if you know, of course, and I'm pretty sure you know, but you know what stigma is. And if you do, could you explain that to me? And the first person breaking the ice gets to tell us what their favorite self-care hobby or routine is. I would like to break the ice. Isabel. Hello.
Hi, everyone. Hi. So I love the term stigma. I believe what stigma means is something that you're absolutely not allowed. It's like similar to taboo, but more of a stigma. It's like when you're really not allowed to talk about it. For example, it's better to explain it with an example, like within the working environment, it's very much stigmatized, any topic of mental health. So like you're not allowed to even mention, for example, that you have any mental sort of health issues such as like depression, anxiety, bipolar. It's stigmatized in a way that in the media as well, like it's usually more of like a negative connotation towards mental health. There's always discrimination, and people with mental health issues are oftentimes looked upon as something weak, or as someone that is weak and not as capable, or just like not reliable because of sort of some of the things that we have to go through as people with mental health issues. And that's what I sort of see as kind of stigmatized, when there's always a negative term on it. I'm not sure if I explained that well.
You explained that very well. Thank you, Isabel. So clear and so true. And I love the passion that you talk with. Could you share with the group, since you broke the ice, what your favorite hobby or self-care routine is?
All right, so that's a funny one. So I'm very, very passionate about mental health issues and sexual assault as well, like all that umbrella topic.
Right.
So what I do as my favorite sort of self-care routine is dressing up, putting stilettos on, just taking some pictures. It sounds very shallow, but for me, that's super important. I wanted to take my own life in 2019, and ever since then, I realized I needed to make a change. And so just like it's all about the little things. And even if it's something super shallow or something that seems silly to somebody else, it might be really important to someone. And for me, that's just dressing up and just taking pictures. And then after that, I feel a lot better and just more happy. Even if I had a really dark day, that's just kind of a little self-care routine that I do to make myself feel better.
Wow, I love it. And I love also that you shared. Thank you, Isabel. It's always important when people sharing their stories. I am incredibly always proud of courage of people, you know, talking openly about mental well-being. And that's why also we're here. Why should this be a taboo? So that's the first action that we're doing to eliminate inequality and discrimination, is naming the elephant in the room, right? So I think that's all a little bit about language. Would anyone else like to share anything about stigma or discrimination, or just share anything on these lines where we are going? Also in the chat is fine if you wouldn't like to talk. Another icebreaker, perhaps? No? All right. So, in the lines of this, because you know that stigma means literally branded by fire. So really like something that it's really like visible also. Stigma and discrimination create worse effects on our mental well-being, because the inequality and the exclusion, they go hand by hand in this sense. Yeah. So again, please feel free also to unmute yourself at any time. All right, so one thing that we can do against stigma and discrimination is to talk about things, and we have started that, so I'm really glad. And talking involves language and communication, right? So I always say language can help us. It could be our worst enemy or our ally. You know how sometimes miscommunication happens because of not what we meant, but because how it came out. Sometimes we have actually great intention. It comes out so bad that sometimes language becomes our worst enemy. But if you use it properly, it really can help in the territory of mental well-being and inclusion. So I'm going to show you a little bit how to use nonviolent communication to both include others, but also to be heard as a person. And also how this attitude towards nonviolent communication reduces mental stigma around mental health. And then we're going to do a short exercise about how to listen, because communication is also about listening and be open. Mental well-being is about listening to others with an open mind, right? Trying to take our judgment aside and be present with the people and their stories, even though it might be difficult not to judge, but we got to make that effort, right? That's also a little bit what the theme of this year is. Does anyone have any question about what we're going to do right now, or would like to share anything else? So again, encouraging you to share, since you are here, right? You want to spend these 45 minutes that are left well. So anyone, any question or any thoughts? Also in the chat, if it's hard to talk. All right. So I would like to start with doing a little bit of nonviolent communication. But let's talk then a little bit about violent communication. So in my experience, in all territories, so I'm not saying this happens in academia or happens necessarily in corporate, this happens also home. So we are touching here different environments. Then of course you can always adapt it to your environment. Imagine that you receive this sentence: your idea is wrong, or your idea is stupid, or you are stupid, you didn't get it. Okay, that I would classify within violent communication, or communication that creates defensiveness. So in my years of experience with assertive communication and working with certain clients, it was clear that when you hear a qualitative judgment over who you are and what you do is very hard. And this has an impact on mental health. How do you think that we could change this sentence into a non-violent one? So I'm going to teach you how to do that. But to create interaction, I would like you to make an example of how we could say the same, but with different words. Anyone? How could we say the same?
Can I say something?
Sure, okay. Natalie, yay, you're welcome to talk, absolutely.
I'm not sure about what I'm gonna say, but I would probably say that I would say something like, in my opinion, and then I would say my idea, so that I'm not necessarily considering that the other person is wrong, but in my opinion, I just have another opinion.
Yes, I love it. Thank you, Natalie, for re-breaking the ice. What's your favorite hobby or self-care routine?
So I started meditating already a few years ago, and I increased this practice during COVID. Yeah. And even though I'm not always consistent, it's something that when I feel that I'm completely out of balance, it's a resource that it's there, and I know that I can use it in my favor. Absolutely. And it's really helping me a lot.
Oh, I love it. I use meditation a lot as well, also for prevention of my own mental struggle, because I think, sometimes when we use it, we say, okay, it's a resource to cope, but it's also a resource also when one is well, right? That you can use whenever you want for your own well-being. Thank you for sharing. So actually, what Natalie says makes sense. So your idea is wrong, you didn't get it, is an attack on the person. What about, we would say, in my opinion, and again, how would we know that the idea of the person is wrong? Would we always know? Is it possible to know it? Because it could be just a different idea, right? So sometimes what I would suggest to say is something also in the line of, in my opinion, your idea regarding the topic that we're talking about might not fit. Is my view correct? Is my assumption correct? So you see how we are switching things from you are wrong or you didn't get it, from, hey, maybe it's off topic, or maybe, I have another idea, or in my opinion, that's some other idea that we could bring on, right? So this, I think, is is a good way. So in my opinion, would be one of the things. But let's continue. This is regarding mental health. So you know how we hear this all the time. Get yourself together. It's not a big deal. It's like, okay, you know, like you just need to pull yourself together and maybe you will feel better. Maybe you heard that before, or like man up, or, you know, woman up, or whatever it is that it said, that again, sentences which are very discriminating. What does even man up mean, right? So it's the usual connection between a man should not be weak, right? Or something like this. So what would we say if somebody's struggling with mental well-being, with their mental health? Would we say, just get yourself together? Isabel.
No, never.
Yeah.
I would say that from my own experience that I hear this sentence a lot, especially in Switzerland. I mean, so I went to university in the UK, and it's a lot more, the topic of mental health is a lot more or less stigmatized and a lot more spoken like about. So whenever I'm back in Switzerland, I do hear the sentence, just get yourself together, or especially like, you know, other people are dying in the world. You're actually so privileged, and, you know, you should never feel depressed. And I feel like to counteract that, it's so much better to say, take your own time, do something that makes you happy, or just self-care, as you mentioned before. It's so important to just like maybe take a day off, do something that makes you feel like really calm, and just never the words like get yourself together. That is probably one of the worst things. And as man up as well, because I feel like also men should be able to show and express emotions, feelings, and say that they're not doing okay currently. And I feel like that's such, again, a stigma that we have in this society.
Absolutely. You're so right, Isabel. Thank you. Thank you again for your contribution. Yes, absolutely. So here we are in the territory of stopping this inequality and discriminating, and putting these links of men, no weak. Woman, if she experiences feelings of anxiety, she's hysterical. All these things, they don't have place here anymore. And the world, I want to believe, is going in a direction where this should not exist. But of course, just get yourself together would not actually acknowledge the person. So what I always say to do, the best would be to say, okay, I acknowledge how you feel. I hear what you say, and it must be very hard. It must be very hard for you. This is just such a game changer. You won't believe it, game changer. Maybe if you have experienced it, you know. So again, if you have questions, use the chat, and then at some point I will answer them. So, you know, our email is territory of poor mental health. I would say that email is one of the worst mental health territories. There is just so much anxiety sometimes in email. People come also with the conviction that we need to answer email immediately, or WhatsApps immediately. Social media, all the devices, 24 hours wired, they increase anxiety globally, right? And also, if we work more from home now, we are more affected. So how can we be mindful in an email? How could you rephrase in a non-violent way, I need this as up? Anyone?
I have something, maybe, I don't know. So
please feel free. There is no right or wrong here. We're in this together.
It's just I was just laughing because this is really this century, and people are really impatient nowadays. And but I would phrase it differently, like, you know, when you really need this, it's like, do you think you have time to maybe finish this up next week or the next days, because I need it for this and this purpose, and it would be cool if that, you know, if you can make it, or let me know if you can make it like the next days or something like that.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Lynn. It's very true. So even if you need something as ACE, you see, I cannot even pronounce, I don't like acronyms. So that from then my difficulty pronouncing them. So I need this as up. It might be true that you need something as soon as possible. However, what about what the other person needs to do. So always, in order to be non-violent in our communication, in order to be mindful of ourselves and others, first of all, no capital letters in the email, like I just wrote this, I need ASAP also in capital letters. It's for the sake of the presentation, of course, but sometimes it happens that you find it in capital letters. So disregard this capital letter and say something in the line of the why is that you need it urgently. So the person would connect with you. If I would say, hey, I need this ASAP and goodbye. I mean, people don't connect with what you need. They connect with the violence in that communication. And if that repeats on the long time, this is a toll on our mental health. So again, please, would you mind getting this information back to me? The reason why I need it urgently is, and I know that probably I'm putting some pressure on you, but the reason is, so a little bit more of poetry in our emails would not hurt. Okay, before I go into other information, does anyone have any question? Lynn.
So I was just thinking, so every time I hear this, I need this ASAP, it's most of the time like someone up the hierarchy. So your boss or like your, I don't know, supervisor kind of this, and he just wants to publish this paper and then you have to rush through this. But I don't know, is there like, I find it problematic because those who actually do not need it that much, they attend those courses like this course or mental health course in general, because they are in the situation where they're not feeling good sometimes. But actually those who actually need to have their communication fixed, they don't go to those courses. And what do you think can we do about this? Or because talking to your boss is,
No. So I love what you just said, Lynn. Thank you for that. It uncovers a few things. So first of all, you can always recommend your manager, your superior, team leader, whatever you want to call them, to come to these occasions. I heard that many times. I am here, but my boss is not here, so maybe they cannot profit from these communication tips. Invite them to come with you to this kind of workshops. So as you can see in the chat, the Me Well community was also putting some other events that you can invite people, but also you have the link to my services and my workshops. There are many communication workshops that can be done, but in general, invite them to go to just any communication workshop out there. I think that's a good start for mental well-being. I think it's always a good start. And I get it that you might say, Lynn, hey, if I go, but my boss doesn't go, then nothing changes. Okay, what about we tell them an authentic truth in the name of nonviolent communication? Hey, I went to a communication workshop based on mental health and the need to use better language. And sometimes I feel a little bit anxious when I read, I need this ASAP. Could we talk about the priorities? I know it takes courage, okay? Don't get me wrong. It takes courage to stand up to somebody and say, this email makes me anxious. This sentence makes me anxious. But it's possible, believe me. I used to work in a company where my boss kept saying, when is this ready? At least 10 question marks. I'm not kidding. So I stood up to the director and said, it makes me anxious to read all these question marks. And in Italy, where I come from, it's considered like being impolite when you would go with so many signs. Would you consider writing something different? Okay, he reconsidered. Yeah, it took a little bit of courage. It took a few bad glances from other colleagues. It took one comment that I was being childish, but it took a lot, and yet he then became more respectful with me. So I don't know if this story helps you with what you were saying, Lynn, really to name the elephant in the room. Does that help a bit?
It's just my previous boss. That's so I'm out of this anyway.
Again, you can always say, I went to a course and I learned something and I would like to apply it. What about we apply? Okay. And this provokes a change of culture that then evolves within academia, within organizations, within a family environment. Family environment can be a violent communication environment too, right? So you can apply this everywhere. Natalie, did you have a question or something? Because I saw your hand raised. Okay, no, it was not for that. Okay.
I think Isabel had a question.
I'm sorry. Yes, Isabel and then Mada. Yes, Madalena. Yes.
Hi. I was just gonna say that I agree with what you said about sort of gently raising the issue with your employer. The problem is if you're in a huge corporation like UBS, that is in a place where it's highly stigmatized, the topic of mental health, and you're not allowed to mention any word of depression, anxiety, any of these topics, simply going up to your boss, which personally I tried in the past. It got me, my responsibilities were removed. I was being sort of behind my back called as being weak and unreliable. And I feel like that's a little bit of a problem if you work for a huge corporation where mental health really just is such a taboo still. And I would find it amazing to have sort of to provoke a change of culture, but it's really difficult in such a huge corporation to provoke it without being highly discriminated. So
I hear you, Isabel, and I want to really acknowledge you also for the difficulty you mentioned. So when I hear this, I usually say something in the line of, you remember when women couldn't vote? You remember when things were, I'm taking the example of women probably also because I'm a woman, and then that's what I would identify more, but you remember when women couldn't vote? You remember when scientific research was only men? Do you remember when people were where women were told to stay home, or other categories of so-called minorities or discriminated? And you know how far we have come, and yet there is a lot to do. So my hope is that people speak up enough so that this provokes a little change, and the companies become aware that they might lose people for not bringing their interest into mental well-being. It could happen that a person resigns or leaves a place because it's not aligned with their values. That happened before, will happen in the future. I'm not saying people should quit. I'm saying I hope that somebody speaks up, and some individuals in a company one day would say, yes, I'm glad you raised this issue. But I guess the high hierarchical places have there is a lot of impact on how you speak. So my suggestion here is always to start with a little bit on nonviolent communication and a few more things that I'm going to teach you right now. It's always a good start, soft and good start. Maddalena.
Sorry, I was just wanted to follow up quickly on what Lynn was saying, which I understand perfectly. I don't have experience in corporates, but I've been in the university system for a while, and it's true that you have this hierarchy, and it always feels like it's the top levels that should be here actually and should take notice of that. But I do believe that you're part of a group, and the good practices and the kind practices are contagious. The same way the bad practices unfortunately are. So that it's really true that the change starts with you, and you have a voice and you have a power to be an example for other people that maybe are less informed, maybe don't even know that this thing, we should pay attention to that, but they would start doing what you're doing because it will make them feel better too. And even though people don't speak, for sure they want to be heard, and for sure they want to speak, and maybe they just need someone to show that this is possible, even with tiny little daily things that will make all of us in the group feel better. And another thing I was thinking of is that we used to have a lot of journal clubs or group meetings in which we were asked to present something. And maybe this is a topic that you could present to the group in occasion of those things. I don't know how to promote a more welcoming and inclusive work within the group. And I've read this research. You can make it very scientific because there is research about that. So I think there are ways, either in your personal communications, or even as a researcher to bring the topic to the group, and maybe it will reach the upper levels as well.
Think that we can find really comfort in a lot of also what Maddalena said, that in knowing that the action of one, of the action, symbolic action also of a group being here, listening to these things, can make a difference in your environment. You start practicing this at home, then you practice it at the university, then you practice with your superior, then it becomes something, but it needs to start. And also sometimes you got to take sometimes a little bit of courage. Sometimes the fear is, okay, what would happen to me? And you mentioned that you face consequence sometimes when you speak. However, some practices on nonviolent communication are really, really good. And I would like actually to explain some more of them to you. So acknowledge or disagreeing assertively. So assertive communication goes very much in line with nonviolent communication. It's just good practice. If you read the book of Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life by Rosenberg, it's just, he basically said, you can say whatever you want as long as it's nonviolent. I believe him. I believe it. It's just, it would take guts and courage. And this has a lot to do also on your personal development journey, right? Where are you? Where are your values? Where are you in your self-care? But let's go back to communication. So acknowledge and disagree assertively. Sometimes acknowledging people is the best you can do, and it provides a lot of good mental well-being. Okay, when a person is telling me something, I always say, if I hear you correctly, or I use that with you as well, with each one of you, I hear you, I acknowledge you, and I feel your frustration. And I don't use them because are part of something that I learned as by heart. I use them consciously because they help me and they help my interlocutors. So sometimes I say, did I hear you correctly? Did you mean that? Because we are full of assumptions. Sometimes also in a communication within your environment, you can misread people. You can go with some assumptions. What about we check actually with people? Yeah, check in. Did you mean that? Didn't I mean that? And sometimes what takes a toll on mental well-being are actually the things we don't say, or those disagreements that we avoid. I'm going to avoid speaking with my superior, team leader, family member, whatever, boss, because we're going to disagree and the relationship is going to be broken. Sometimes the relationship is not going to be broken. You just have to give a chance to your mission. So you could say something in the line of that you see in the slide, the second, I see your point, though I disagree, or though I have a different view of things. Why not disagreeing? Whose peace are we keeping? Our peace, somebody else's peace? Do we want to have like a fake, a peaceful environment? No, we want to disagree productively. Also, especially for people who are researchers, who are in the academia environment, it's important to bring ideas, right? To disagree. And as well, also say no. So disengaging with things. So explain why you cannot engage in things, okay? I cannot engage in this idea, in this project, because maybe it doesn't go with my value, or I cannot engage because it's too much. I simply don't believe in it. Again, ask yourself, what is that you believe in? That will guide you through with what to engage. It's just super important. And one last sentence that I was saying before, again, mental health related. It must be hard to feeling XYZ. How are you feeling now? Is there anything I can do to help you? Again, if there are any team leaders here in this call, or people reporting to people, whatever it is, the degree of relation that you have, this sentence is always super good. Is there anything that I can do to make our work together easier? Is there anything I can do to support you? How are you feeling? But really, not just how are you and let's get to work immediately as up. So is there anything we can do to help each other? Does anyone have any question or comments about all the sentences that I'm sharing with you to acknowledge others and disagree assertively? You can raise your hand or just comment in the chat, Also for those who haven't spoken but are still here or don't want to have the camera on because we're recording, it would be lovely to know that you are there listening, also via chat. Or you can unmute yourself if you are confident using your voice or feel like it's the good moment to do so. All right, so I would like to then show you a couple of more things of nonviolent communication, and then we're going to do together the listening exercise because we have 15 minutes together. So it's super important that we focus on learning as much as possible in this, and that we tackle the main topic, which is how to be more inclusive, because this language is language of being inclusive, is language of making people feel heard and visible by acknowledging them, by disagreeing with them in a good way, and by also asking, what do you need? So I would like to show you the OFNR method. It's a lot of what we just said, so I'm just summarizing it. This model is observation. So in the Nonviolent Communication book, you say that when you are explaining how you feel about something, or you want to disagree or make a request, it would be good that you show facts. Again, in the scientific sense, then maybe it's even the best, right? So when you write me an email saying I need it ASAP, I feel anxious. Why do I feel anxious? You might not know, or you might know. I feel that there is pressure, and I need to feel that we are in this together, that I'm just not the only one feeling pressured, and then make a request. How about we stop sending email that say I need it ASAP and we talk, or we start making priorities different, or what needs to happen for us to work together. So again, this is a model of observation, feeling, need, and request. I think it works wonder. I always use that. And actually my example is that I used it for somebody who kept repeatedly interrupting me during meetings years and years ago when I used to work in corporate. I used it and I say, when you interrupt me in meetings, I feel invisible. Yeah. And not I am invisible, I feel, because you are talking over me. And I don't need that. I need actually inclusion. This is why I wanted to use this example in today's webinar. I need inclusion. Inclusion is one of my most important needs. I felt very excluded when I was in high school, whereas when I was in university, I felt good. But in high school, I felt really not good. So it's a value for me. It's something that I carry in my baggage. So when I make a request, I always think of that and how that helped me. And actually the person interrupting me apologized and completely changed their behavior. So again, I want to give you an example of successful use of nonviolent communication to make sure you understand that this is possible. Would maybe anyone dare to make an example with when you do this, I feel, and make a request? You can fake that there is your interlocutor here, that there is a person you would like to talk to, or make any other request. Would someone like to try? Let's give it a try now. That's the place. Anyone there? Hello? Esteban, Jackie, Sofia, Nick, Martina, Vero, Betty, Maria. Anyone would like to try an example? Jada, Tiam. Gotta get this moving. 12 minutes left. Mo, you are laughing. Go ahead with an example. Would you like to try the model? You are muted. Yes.
Sorry, I don't have anything in mind. Sorry.
Maybe Isabel, would you like to try an example of nonviolent communication using when you do this, I feel, or I need, and to make a request? Would you like?
Sure, I'll go ahead.
Thank you.
All right, I'll use the email example because I too get a lot of emails and they do provoke a lot of pressure. So when you send me an email with capital letters and saying it that you need it right now, ASAP, or with a lot of exclamation marks or question marks, that makes me feel very under pressure. It makes me feel like I'm out of breath, and it sort of like makes me feel very anxious. And I would like you to, well, can you actually tell your employer, I would like you to approach this with more and more like nonviolent communication?
Of
or
course
like
you can say that. Of course you can say that.
Exclamation marks, and just kind of understand that we're all in this together, that we are a team, we work as a team, and a team is kind of working together and not as sort of a separate entity, each on their own. I would need you to be a little more understanding or a little more patient towards your team. And how about we go to a mental health communication event together so we could all learn something and learn how to sort of communicate better with each other to have sort of a better result at the end of the day.
I love it. And you know also why I love it? Because it's inclusive. You said we are talking about inclusion today, right? So we're in this together. You are a team. At the end of the day, you have the same goals. Theoretically, a team should have the same goals. So you said that very well. And I encourage you to say exactly as you said, orally. Don't write these things, because in my experience, when one uses nonviolent communication in a written form, it's good. But if no one ever tackled the elephant in the room, it's better do that face to face. Then when the team reaches a level of nonviolent communication that is acceptable, then you can start doing that also in writing. In my experience, the best thing would be immediately in an oral form, and then you could continue in writing, because then you have no misunderstandings. And I love your contribution to the example, Isabel. Anyone else would like to dare to make a sentence?
Well,
Maria. Hello.
Hello. I just wanted to say that I had such a situation with my supervisor when actually I needed something from him. And actually, it was quite stressful for me until that moment that I started to say out to him my feelings. And actually, before this moment, I was thinking, oh my God, maybe he doesn't like me, or like we have like not really very productive communication, and why he doesn't answer me all the time. And then when I actually say to him directly about like I was thinking it's not enough professional to do like that, but anyway it led our communication in a more productive way. He just explained me about he have a lot of projects, like he just explained me why it's like that, and like gave some promises for the future, and maybe started also to understand like my condition. And I think it's great. I think actually what I want to say is I would like to know this earlier, that to express the feeling, it's nothing bad, and actually it's rather to help than looks like unprofessional. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Thank you for sharing, Maria. So again, another successful story of how expressing the feelings actually result in a good outcome. Maria, would you like to share what you do as hobby or self-care?
I do some crazy things, I think. So actually mental health, like when I feel myself a bit like kind of unhealthy, normally it's about the pressure, like brain pressure. Yeah. So like from the conversation. So what I do something physically to compensate this like work. So particularly I go in Aara and I swim all over the year, like cold water, and it's like making like refreshing, and I don't know, it refreshes the body, and it also refresh my mind, and it's like my anti-stress tool.
I love it. Thank you. And sorry, Maddalena, I forgot to ask you what you do in your self-care time or hobby, if you want to share with others before you talked. So,
sorry, baby's screaming right now. For me, it's usually some form of gentle movement. So it's yoga usually, or journaling.
Wonderful. Lynn, did you share your technique? Sorry, your self-care routine? Would you like that?
Yeah, so I also do more physical activities like sports in general, to feel a bit less stressed.
The energy, yeah? All right, so fantastic. So we have 5 minutes together. Let's do an exercise. So I wanted to do this exercise in breakout rooms, but I believe it would be actually better if I do that and in front of you. So I would talk for 1 minute. I will tell a story for 1 minute, and I would like everyone to listen without taking any judgment or just setting the judgment aside as a normal story. And then some of you will repeat what I said right afterwards without any connotation or any qualitative judgment. It's just to be able to listen. So, you know, inclusion, a lot of inclusion is about listening to others, about listening with no judgment. So I'm going to tell you a story, and I will time myself 1 minute, and then I will ask you to repeat, and then we'll wrap up. All right? Start. All right. So recently I took up a practice which is called Eft Tapping. So it's similar to acupuncture, but it's you know, tapping yourself in certain parts of your body. And I started to use this with my clients, my one-to-one clients that I coach. I started using for my self-care routine. I started using in groups, actually within corporations and universities. Works very well for me. What it does for me, it relaxes me. It gives me a lot of peace of mind. And then I feel that I can use it anytime. I even downloaded an app so that I can, you know, just use it anytime. It really, I really wonder why I didn't use that before in my life, but I'm quite glad. And it's something that it's actually started, I think, in the US, but now it's quite popular also in Europe. All right, 1 minute passed. So what did I say? Oh, I'm happy you do tapping as well, Isabel. Anyone could repeat just 1 or 2 concepts of what I said?
Can I?
Sure.
So you were talking about a new technique that you discover, a strategy that you are using to improve your overall health or mental well-being. And it's about this tapping technique. So you tap with your fingers on some parts of your body, and this makes you feel relaxed and in peace. And you were wondering why you didn't use it before in your life.
Wonderful. Thank you, Natalie. So what's happening here? What's happening here? Natalie repeated something. We know qualitative judgment of what I said. You could decorate this with other things like, okay, Alessandra said that, so maybe does this mean that she was stressed? This is why she was using that, or she was looking at the phone to put the alarm. Those are all qualitative judgment of our listening. If we manage to listen to stories, also of mental health stories, and we want to be inclusive and let people feel that they are accepted, that would be the best way. Try to summarize what they say without judgment. And if you have questions, to just check with them. For example, Alessandra, did you start using this because you were stressed, or is that just my assumption? Are you using it with clients because of, or is just my assumption? Check assumptions and be always open when you hear others, because that's the best inclusion way. And we are right on time. Do you have any questions before we wrap up?
Just a quick note, we can cancel the recording or turn off the recording, and everybody can ask their questions if they would like to ask.